I'll give you 100 grand if you can explain this patent to my partners. In German. The voice of Carter Vance, a tech mogul notorious for his arrogance, sliced through the quiet hum of Austin's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, the Apex. A thick stack of $100 bills hit the linen tablecloth with a contemptuous thud. Every eye in the place, from tech billionaires to senators, swiveled towards Samuel, the new waiter. Samuel was 32, a Nigerian man whose calm eyes had seen far more than the bottom of a champagne flute. The money was an insult, a performance, a declaration that in Carter Vance's world, a black man in a waiter's uniform was just part of the scenery, a prop to be used for amusement. Carter leaned back, a smug grin plastered on his face. What's the matter, buddy? Cat got your tongue? Or is 100 G's not enough for a guy like you? He gestured to his two German investors who stared at their plates, their faces tight with embarrassment. My associates here flew all the way from Munich. They need to understand the technicals. Since you're standing here, you might as well make yourself useful. The entire restaurant had become a theater for Carter's cruelty. Samuel looked at the cash, a vulgar pile of green paper that could change everything. It was enough to fund his sister's experimental cancer treatment back in Lagos, enough to finally lift the weight that had been crushing his chest for 2 years. He knew this wasn't about German, it was about putting him in his place, but Carter Vance had no idea who he was about to put in place. While everyone in that restaurant saw a waiter, his eyes held the quiet confidence of a man who once mapped the stars. If this story of hidden genius and sweet revenge has you hooked, stick around, because what happened next is something the Apex will never forget. Carter Vance clapped his hands slowly, a smirk playing on his lips. Perfect, so let's get this show on the road. He turned to the German investors, his voice dripping with condescension. Gentlemen, what you're seeing here is a classic case of the American dream. This fella thinks he can be anything he wants. One of the investors, a stern-faced man named Klaus Richter, shifted uncomfortably. Carter, this is not necessary. We can simply use the translator app. Nonsense, Klaus, Carter boomed, waving a dismissive hand. You need a real cultural lesson. You want to invest in America, you got to understand the people. I bet this guy barely got his high school diploma. Probably thinks Munich is a type of beer. The second investor, a younger man named Friedrich, just stared at his water glass, his jaw clenched. For Samuel, the insults were like distant static. His mind drifted back 2 years, to a life that felt like a dream. Dr. Samuel Adebayo, celebrated astrophysicist at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. He was a man whose work on stellar nurseries was published in international journals, a man who lectured to packed auditoriums of eager students. He was fluent in 6 languages, a necessity for a career that involved collaborating with space agencies from around the globe. That life shattered with a single phone call. It's your sister, Ada. The diagnosis. It's aggressive. Samuel sold everything, his home, his car, his prized telescope. He drained his savings to pay for treatments that barely worked. When he heard about a radical new therapy available only in America with a price tag that looked like a telephone number, he made a choice. He came to the US, working 2 grueling jobs, sending every single penny home. The man Carter Vance saw was a ghost, a shell of the man he once was. I accept, Samuel said, his voice quiet but clear as a bell, cutting through Carter's monologue. The smug look on Carter's face flickered. What did you just say? I accept your offer, Mr. Vance. $100,000. I'll explain your patent. The challenge was absurd, the humiliation was immense, but in Samuel's eyes, a flicker of an old fire had just been rekindled. He was about to give Carter Vance the cultural lesson of a lifetime. If you're tired of bullies like Carter getting their way, you're going to want to see this. Make sure you're subscribed to Black Fables, because the tables are about to turn. Carter's surprise quickly morphed back into arrogant amusement. He let out a loud, barking laugh. You accept? You hear that, gentlemen? The waiter accepts. He looked Samuel up and down with theatrical disdain. Kid, you got guts, I'll give you that. But you don't know what you're getting into. This isn't just asking, where's the bathroom in German. This is a patent for a quantum computing processor. You probably think quantum is what Ant-Man does. The memory of his sister Ada's weak but hopeful smile flashed in Samuel's mind. He was here for her. He could endure this. 2 years ago, as Ada's illness worsened, Samuel found himself in a sterile hospital room, holding her hand. The doctor, a kind but weary man, had been blunt. The standard treatments are failing. There is an experimental CAR T-cell therapy in America, but the cost, it is astronomical. Samuel had looked at his brilliant sister, a promising law student now frail and fighting for her life, and made a silent vow. He would move heaven and earth. So he did. He moved to Austin, a city he'd once visited for a scientific conference, and took the first jobs he could find, a dishwasher by day, a waiter at the Apex by night. He slept 4 hours a night, his body ached, but the thought of Ada kept him going. His former colleagues thought he had vanished. His academic legacy was gathering dust. Here he was invisible, until tonight. You see, the problem with you people, Carter continued, his voice rising, now fully playing to the hushed restaurant, is you don't know your place. You watch a few movies. You think you can be a CEO, a doctor, an astrophysicist. Samuel blinked, the word hanging in the air. Carter had no idea how close he'd struck. He was just spewing stereotypes, unaware that he was addressing a man who had spent 3 years on a postdoctoral fellowship at the Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics in Munich. A man who had co-authored papers with German scientists in German. A man whose friends in Bavaria had teased him for speaking German with a stuffier, more academic accent than they did. So, let's set the rules, Carter announced, enjoying the spotlight. You gotta explain the entire abstract, section by section, convincingly. Carter had no idea he was talking to a man whose mind processed cosmic complexities for fun. The trap he was setting for a waiter was about to snap shut on its creator. Stick with us at Black Fables to see this bully get exactly what's coming to him. Klaus Richter, the older investor, tried to intervene again, his German accent thick with disapproval. Carter, this has gone on long enough. This is not business, this is a circus. Carter shot him a look. Relax, Klaus. This is a lesson in due diligence. I need to know the people I hire aren't frauds. He turned back to Samuel, his eyes gleaming with malice. And speaking of frauds, if you fail, and trust me, you are gonna fail spectacularly, you will get down on your knees and apologize to everyone here for wasting our time. Then, you'll work a month here for free. A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. The sheer cruelty of the demand was shocking, even for a man like Carter. But Samuel remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. For 2 years he had swallowed his pride, endured casual racism, and worked until his bones ached. He had been humbled by life, by circumstance. Carter Vance's petty sadism was nothing compared to the fear of losing his sister. This wasn't a humiliation, it was an opportunity, a godsend. I have a condition of my own, Samuel said, his voice even. Carter raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Oh yeah? What's that? The document, Samuel said, nodding towards the thick file on the table. Is it written in Hochdeutsch, Standard High German, or is the terminology more specific to a regional dialect, like Bavarian technical slang? The question, so specific and academic, hung in the air. Carter was thrown off balance. What? It's German. What does it matter? But Klaus Richter leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at Samuel for the first time with genuine interest. It is Standard High German. Klaus answered directly to Samuel, ignoring Carter. But the engineering terms are highly specialized. Thank you, Samuel said with a slight nod to Klaus, before turning his gaze back to Carter. I accept all your conditions. He didn't know it. But with that one simple question, Samuel had already planted a seed of doubt in Carter's mind. The waiter wasn't just calling his bluff, he was critiquing the cards. The show was about to begin, but the star wasn't who Carter thought it was. You won't want to miss a second of this. Keep watching with Black Fables. All right then, genius, Carter sneered, shoving the bound patent document across the table. Knock yourself out. He was trying to recover his swagger, but the precision of Samuel's question had rattled him. He waved over a manager. Bring this man a chair. We wouldn't want our scholar to get tired. The sarcasm was thick, but the other patrons were no longer snickering. They were watching with rapt attention, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. Samuel calmly took the seat, the document cool and heavy in his hands. He opened it, and his eyes scanned the first page. It was dense, filled with diagrams and complex chemical and physical formulas. He almost smiled. It was like reading a ghost story from his past life. At the Max Planck Institute, his days were filled with documents just like this. He remembered long nights fueled by coffee and pretzels, arguing with German colleagues about the nuances of translating theoretical physics into practical engineering specs. His German advisor, the formidable Dr. Schmidt, used to say, "Samuel, to truly understand the science, you must command the language in which it is written. Precision is everything, in formulas and in grammar." Those years had been some of the most challenging and rewarding of his life. He hadn't just learned a language. He had absorbed a way of thinking, a culture of meticulous engineering and scientific rigor. Carter saw a waiter looking at gibberish. Samuel saw a familiar landscape. He saw equations he knew by heart and terminology that was second nature to him. He also saw something else, a small, almost imperceptible error in one of the foundational equations on the third page. An error so fundamental it would render the entire device useless. It was a rookie mistake, something a first-year graduate student might make, but it had somehow slipped past Carter's entire team. "Well, we're waiting," Carter prompted, his confidence returning as the silence stretched on. "Too many big words for you?" Samuel looked up from the page, his eyes locking with Carter's. The mask of the humble waiter was gone. In its place was the quiet authority of an expert. The hunter was about to become the prey. "The story's heating up, and you've got a front-row seat here at Black Fables. This is more interesting than I expected," Samuel said, his voice carrying a new weight. He closed the document gently. Carter scoffed. "Don't stall. Just admit you can't do it so we can all get on with our night." "On the contrary," Samuel said calmly, "I find the central thesis of this patent quite ambitious." He turned his attention to the German investors. "But before I begin the translation and explanation, I'd like to make this a bit more interesting." A hush fell over the area. No one could believe the waiter was now dictating terms. "How much more interesting?" Carter asked, his voice a low growl. He was cornered. Backing down now, in front of his investors and peers, would be a public defeat. "You offered $100,000 for a simple translation," Samuel stated. "A clerical task, really. Let's raise the stakes. If I can not only translate this document flawlessly, but also identify a critical design flaw in your quantum architecture, a flaw that would lead to catastrophic failure, you double the amount. $200,000. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Friedrich, the younger investor, let out an involuntary, choked laugh of disbelief. Klaus Richter stared at Samuel, his expression one of pure, unadulterated shock. Carter Vance's face went from red to a sickly white. The idea was preposterous. This waiter, this nobody, was claiming he could find a flaw that his own multi-million-dollar team of engineers had missed. It was insane. "And if you're wrong," Carter hissed, his pride forcing him to engage. "If there's no flaw, or if you're just making things up, then I will not only work for a month for free, as you suggested," Samuel said, his gaze unwavering. "I will also get on my knees and personally polish your shoes with my own shirt, right here, right now, and you won't owe me a dime." Carter stared at him, trapped. The offer was a win-win for him. Either he was proven right, and the waiter was publicly humiliated in the most debasing way imaginable, but the alternative was too ridiculous to even consider. "You've got a deal," Carter snarled, extending a trembling hand. Samuel shook it, his grip firm and steady. "Deal." The pact was sealed. Carter thought he had just guaranteed his victory. He had no idea he had just paid $200,000 to have his entire career dismantled in public by the very man he had tried to destroy. "This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Don't go anywhere. Black Fables is just getting started." Samuel took a sip of water, took a deep breath, and began. He did not look at the document. He didn't need to. He spoke directly to Klaus and Friedrich, and the language that flowed from his lips was not the hesitant, broken German of a tourist. It was the fluid, precise, academic German of a native intellectual. "Guten Abend, meine Herren," he began, his tone formal and confident. "Erlauben Sie mir, Ihnen die Kernkonzepte dieses Patents für einen Quantenprozessor auf Basis von supraleitenden Qubits zu erläutern. Good evening, gentlemen. Allow me to explain the core concepts of this patent for a quantum processor based on superconducting qubits. Klaus Richter's jaw literally dropped. Friedrich leaned forward, his eyes wide with astonishment. This wasn't just German. This was the high-level technical language of their field. Carter, who didn't speak a word of the language, looked back and forth between them, a sick feeling growing in the pit of his stomach. "What's he saying?" he demanded. Klaus held up a hand, silencing him, completely captivated. Samuel continued, explaining the complex principles of quantum superposition and entanglement with an elegance and clarity that was breathtaking. He used analogies that were both scientifically accurate and easy to understand, a skill honed by years of teaching. He was no longer a waiter. He was a professor delivering a masterclass. Das Design nutzt eine Josephson-Verbindung, die Qubit-Zustände zu manipulieren. Samuel explained, gesturing with his hands as if he were at a lectern. Allerdings, und das ist der entscheidende Punkt, ignoriert die im Dokument dargelegte Gleichung für die Torkalibrierung die Auswirkungen des Quantenrauschens bei höheren Betriebsfrequenzen. The design utilizes a Josephson junction to manipulate the qubit states. However, and this is the crucial point, the equation outlined in the document for gate calibration ignores the effects of quantum noise at higher operational frequencies. My God! Friedrich whispered in English, looking at Klaus. He's not just translating, he's analyzing. Carter's face was now ashen. The confident smirk had been replaced by a mask of pure panic. The murmurs from the surrounding tables grew louder. Everyone knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. Samuel hadn't just met the challenge. He was transcending it, turning Carter's cruel spectacle into his own personal TED Talk. The humiliation Carter had planned was coming, but it was heading in the wrong direction, like a boomerang about to hit the thrower right between the eyes. You're watching a master at work, and the finale? It's coming up next on Black Fables. Samuel paused, then switched seamlessly to flawless, unaccented English, his voice now holding an edge of steel. To put it in layman's terms for Mr. Vance's benefit, he said, looking directly at the terrified tech mogul, your entire design is fundamentally unstable. The moment you try to scale this processor, it will collapse into a state of decoherence. You're not building a quantum computer. You're building a very, very expensive space heater. He then turned back to the Germans. The flaw is on page 3, equation 2.7. The Hamiltonian operator fails to account for ambient thermal interference. Klaus grabbed the document, flipping frantically to the page. He and Friedrich scanned the equation, their eyes widening in horror as the truth of Samuel's words hit them. He was right. It was a fatal, amateurish mistake. Who are you? Klaus asked, his voice filled with awe. Carter sat frozen, his world crumbling around him. The man he had mocked, the man he had tried to break, had just exposed his entire company as a sham. My name, the waiter replied, standing up, his full height seeming to command the room, is Dr. Samuel Adebayo. I have a PhD in astrophysics from the University of Nigeria and completed my postdoctoral fellowship in quantum mechanics at the Max Planck Institute in Munich. My specialty was correcting computational errors in stellar modeling. Errors just like this one. The silence was deafening. I gave up my career 2 years ago to pay for my sister's medical care after our country's healthcare system failed her. Samuel continued, his voice resonating with quiet dignity. So yes, Mr. Vance, I am a waiter, because my family needed a provider more than the world needed another scientist. You looked at me and saw a uniform. You didn't see a man. Klaus Richter slowly rose from his chair. His face was a thundercloud of fury, but it wasn't directed at Samuel. He stared at Carter with utter contempt. You brought us here to invest $50 million in a project that is worthless, he said, his voice dangerously low. And you tried to humiliate this brilliant man for sport. Klaus, wait, it's a misunderstanding, Carter stammered, finally finding his voice. We're pulling our funding. Effective immediately, Friedrich said, standing beside his partner. And we will be sure to inform our colleagues in the European investment community about your fraudulent technology and your disgusting character. The fallout was immediate. the karma swift and brutal. Carter Vance wasn't just losing a deal, he was losing everything. The public humiliation he had engineered had just come full circle, and it was more devastating than he could have ever imagined. Greatness can be hidden, but it can never be extinguished. If you believe that, hit that subscribe button for Black Fables. As Carter Vance sat in stunned, humiliated silence, Samuel calmly walked over to the table and began collecting the $100 bills. He stacked them neatly. "I believe this is $200,000, Mr. Vance," he said, his voice devoid of malice. It was the voice of a man simply closing a business transaction. With trembling hands, Carter pulled out his checkbook, his empire crashing down around him with every stroke of the pen. He didn't just lose the deal. The story of the astrophysicist waiter went viral overnight. His other investors pulled out, his company's stock plummeted to zero, and he was facing lawsuits for fraud. He became a parable in the tech world, a warning against the fatal combination of arrogance and ignorance. 6 months later, Samuel stood in a state-of-the-art laboratory, not as a waiter, but as the director of quantum research for Richter Friedrich Innovations' new North American headquarters in Austin. Klaus had offered him the job on the spot that night. "A man of your intellect and integrity is exactly what we need," he had said. Samuel's salary was more than he had ever dreamed of. His sister Ada was receiving the best medical care in the world at a private clinic in Houston, and her prognosis was excellent. He was finally able to fly her and his mother to America to live with him. One evening, Samuel was giving a guest lecture at the University of Texas. A student in the front row raised her hand. "Dr. Adebayo, after everything you went through, how did you not give in to hatred for men like Carter Vance?" Samuel paused, looking out at the sea of young, hopeful faces. "Because the best revenge isn't seeing your enemy fall," he said. "It's building a life so full of purpose and success that you barely remember they exist." He tried to define me by my apron. He didn't realize my true uniform was a lab coat. He thought my value was what he could pay me, but a person's worth is not determined by their job, their bank account, or the color of their skin. Life will test you. It will knock you down and force you into situations you never imagined. But it can never take away who you are. Your knowledge, your character, your dignity, those are yours forever. Let them be your strength when the world tries to make you small. If this story inspired you, subscribe to Black Fables for more tales of resilience, intellect, and the undeniable power of the human spirit. Because true greatness is not about where you are, but who you are.